When I made a 4-hour video ranking every single episode of Friends, I realized I had a lot of qualms with Phoebe in later seasons. She'd always been fiery, but only when things had escalated and the situation called for it. But in seasons 6 through 10, she seemed to come off increasingly mean-spirited.
It wasn't just that she was fat, the woman smelled like garbage.
But since making that video, I think I finally realized what had gone wrong. Part of what made Phoebe such a whole and believable character in the first seasons was her speech. It was often disorganized.
Oh, by the way, do you think you...
with big leaps in logic mid-conversation.
No, how? He pooped in my shoe. Which one? Those cute little black ones I wear all the time. No, which one? The right or left?
But I never thought about how perfect this stylized speech really suited her particular character. You've probably heard this all before, that Friends has been accused of having shallow characters that rely on just one or two features. Type A Monica, dumb Joey, quirky Phoebe, you've heard this before. But as I look back, I think Phoebe was a lot more than quirky. And the wholeness of her character was largely achieved through her language patterns. And if we listen closely, the way Phoebe
Both fine
talks
answers, but we were looking for leafy.
is a window into her whole life. We know that Phoebe's upbringing was tough. Right from the start, she had a biological mother who left. She has no memory of the dad who walked out either. In what seems to be rapid succession, the only mother she ever knew ended her own life, her stepfather was incarcerated, and she became homeless by age 14. She didn't get a high school education.
People are always talking about what they learned in high school, and I never went to high
So
school.
she didn't even have teachers in her life. She had such little adult influence that she didn't even know her middle
Your
name.
middle name is Pamela? Yes. I never knew mine.
Or the year she was born.
We're not 30, we're 31.
All of these conditions, brought on by the failures of the adults in her life, would inevitably shape a person in some, if not many, ways. For some people in a position like Phoebe's, it's hard to ever feel like you're somebody other than that abandoned child. But luckily for Phoebe, as an adult, she can see herself as a caring friend, a very generous sister, and a loving partner. Though there was a better partner for her than this. Overall, I think Phoebe's character made the biggest leap between who she was as a teenager and who she was when the show began 10 years later. By the writer's design, there's a lot we don't know about Phoebe, including how she went from living on the street to having a steady career that would require studying and certification. We don't know how hard it was for her to transition from identifying as someone who stole and begged for money and into someone fairly regular who enjoys healthy friendships, an honest career, and creative hobbies. And even though we don't get a lot of insight into what that leap looked like, I don't think we need it for the type of program that Friends is. But one thing we do know about this transition is that it was complete. Phoebe's character seems to walk a fine line between acknowledging her trauma and living a day-to-day life that she seems to generally enjoy without disruption from the memories of it. But despite this delicate and seemingly healthy balance that allows her to live this fairly ordinary life, there is a major symptom of her old life that shines through on a regular basis. It's the way that she talks.
I just have this really strong feeling that this cat is my mother.
Are you sure she's in the cat, or have you been taking your grandma's glaucoma medicine again?
How about the fact that she went into my guitar case, which is lined with orange felt? My mother's favorite fish was orange roughy.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I couldn't find my bearings. You mean your earrings? What did I say?
I'm getting too pregnant for this lugging around a stupid massage table. You know, I have to find a job where I carry a smaller table.
Or a job where you don't have to carry a table.
You mean like a doctor?
If you meet people like this in real life who say things that seem to make perfect sense to them but don't to anyone else, that doesn't necessarily mean they've suffered trauma or had everyone abandon them or that they lived on the street. Sometimes people with neurodivergence have this type of communication pattern, and sometimes people are just like this. But since we do know Phoebe lived a traumatic childhood, I think it's not so far-fetched to draw the connection between her difficult past and how she speaks as an adult. You see, when we miss out on adult guidance in those formative years, we also miss out on hearing the way that adults make logical connections in a conversation. But guidance or no guidance, our brains, rapidly firing in our youth to absorb the world around us and make associations and logical shortcuts, are going to make connections anyway. And when kids raise themselves, these connections may not always be the most logical. Another feature of Phoebe's language is its inherent playfulness. Phoebe likes to make rhymes, especially in her original songs, but also sometimes simply just when she's talking.
Because at that time, you see, I thought that everything that rhymed was true. So I thought, if I worked with stocks, I'd have to live in a box and only eat lox and have a pet fox.
It turns out that adults play a major role in the way that kids learn to play. And play plays a major role in the way that kids learn in general. But if there's no adult around to influence how a child experiences play, does that mean that they just won't play? No. Just like before, when we talked about how lack of adult influence is not going to stop a brain from recognizing patterns and forming logical ways of thinking, we have the same thing. A kid's brain, with or without adult guidance, will find play on its own. Phoebe didn't have toys, a bike, or even people she could count on to play with. So perhaps her brain just found play where it could, in her own head. Home or no home, family or no family, Phoebe could count on herself to find play through words. That's why she has so many original songs with playfully childlike lyrics, but very few people around her who seem to get her music. When it comes to this idea that Friends often boils their characters down to just one or two exaggerated traits, some people might actually say that Phoebe's defining overused trait wasn't actually quirkiness, but rather ditziness. But I don't think that's even close to true. Her speech, to me, doesn't reflect ditziness. Rather, it tells the story of someone who had to raise herself, which meant making strange, logical connections that only made sense to her. She achieved a stable and happy life that doesn't hurt anyone, including herself, and to me, this means that her brain, while sometimes unconventional in its logic, has developed thought processes that ultimately lead her to the good intentions that she always has in mind. The shaky and sometimes meandering logic she often vocalizes isn't just a personality quirk, but a side effect of having a brain that had to find some workarounds without adult help. Workarounds that still lead her to great things, stability, and true friendships. And I mean true friendships. The friends choose to include Phoebe in their group, even though she has the background most different from their own. The other 5 friends each had different, but generally good levels of stability. Their lives were filled with hobbies and sports, and adults who at least came to those sports. Chandler? They know that concepts like swim meets, high school reunions, and traditional holiday celebrations are foreign experiences to Phoebe. Nevertheless, they don't treat her as some kind of sideshow to entertain them with horror stories, but they do gently ask questions when they can see something trauma-related is truly disrupting a situation.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get so emotional. I guess it's just... holidays are just hard.
Oh, honey. Is that because your mom died around Christmas?
I think that the friends' acknowledgement of Phoebe's background occurred just the right amount of times throughout the show. It happened sparingly, but caringly, which isn't technically a word, but it rhymed and it just feels right. The friends recognized and empathized with Phoebe's complicated past, but also gave her the freedom to be more than a person defined solely by that past. When the friends did acknowledge that past, it was always done with sincerity. It seemed to come in very few words.
It kind of makes sense, though. She had such a terrible childhood.
And usually reflected an implicit, thoughtful, and quiet empathy. I think that the friend's typical response to her odd speech patterns, which is usually almost nothing at all, reflects that they understand her just enough and they love her just as she is. Now, we've been analyzing these characters as if they're real people this whole time, but of course, these people are really an abstract, magical combination of what writers and actors bring to the table. But somewhere in this combo, in what seems to come from the writer's side, Phoebe's character began to change. I looked into it and realized I'm not the only one who's noticed that Phoebe seems to get meaner as the show progresses. It's just hard to imagine that this...
We haven't known each other for that long a time. And there are 3 things that you should know about me. 1, my friends are the most important thing in my life. 2, I never lie. And 3, I make the best oatmeal raisin cookies in the world. Paulo made a pass at me. Are you okay? So sorry. No, Phoebe, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Oh, wait. Oh, what are we sorry about?
I don't know. Right. He's the pig.
is the same person as this.
Guys, I'm sorry. Can you please talk a little slower?
This is going in your book?
Yeah, it's about relationships. You know, the traps, the pitfalls, what not to do. Keep going. This stuff's great.
Or that this.
Hey.
Earth. I don't know whether it's just because we're breaking up or what, but you have never looked so beautiful.
Is the same person as that.
I had a date with this guy, and I swear to God he is her other half.
The best example, and one of the first examples of this shift, happens in season 7. Phoebe basically tells Chandler that Monica wasn't actually interested in him and only got with him in London because she couldn't find Joey. While some might argue that Phoebe didn't have ill intent and was just being her ditzy self, I just can't agree with that. Because again, I don't find Phoebe ditzy at all. Yes, her thought patterns developed and are expressed in unusual ways, but this unconventional thinking and speaking has never gotten in the way of Phoebe protecting what truly matters to her loved ones. And in this case, given Chandler's insecurities, her comments here are really jeopardizing Chandler and Monica's relationship. Come to think of it, we actually were starting to see her take on this instigator role before this point. Phoebe did almost the same thing in the episode where Rachel's packing up to move out of Monica's, and she starts a fight between these two. And this episode feels all wrong, just as the one with the truth about London feels all wrong. Because early Phoebe might have said wrong things or weird things, but her intentions were almost always careful and pure of heart. And I think that's the problem with Phoebe in the second half of the show's run. Her saying the wrong thing or saying a weird thing in the moment used to reflect a really dynamic, whole character with the foundation of a believable but complicated backstory. In later seasons, I think it was used as a cop-out, as in, oh, Phoebe has no filter, maybe that's where this episode's conflict can come from.
In my opinion, your collective dating record reads like a who's who of human crap.
But there was just always so much more to it than that. All in all, Phoebe's language should remind us of something we too often forget about people in real life. The way people speak tells a story. In the third episode of the show, Phoebe is desperate to give back or give away money she doesn't feel she deserves. In the 100th episode, as a surrogate, she gives birth to her brother's children. Can you name anyone in your real life who would give up $7 grand? Or can you name someone who would be a surrogate for nothing in return? What about someone who would do both? Phoebe in those first 100 episodes will always be the realest Phoebe for me. She spoke like a survivor, but she also talked like someone who was so much more than that, too. If you're still here, thank you. I put a lot of heart and time into videos like this, and this channel is still quite small, so please do subscribe if you want more deep dives like this one. I typically do deep dives and video essays about Y2K era pop culture, and while I have a few things in the works, I'm definitely open to topic requests. In the meantime, if you just can't get enough Y2K pop culture, please check out y2kdaily.net or see the link in the description to subscribe to Millennium Minute, my monthly magazine with forgotten or obscure Y2K era throwbacks for each day of the month. You can pay what you want, even nothing. Read the May issue now and stay tuned for the June issue in a few weeks. Thanks everyone for being here, and I hope to see you again soon.